This is from the book of Revelation, chapter 17, verses 12 through 14, and then also chapter 19, verses 11 through 16. The 10 horns you saw the 10 kings who have not yet received a kingdom, but who for 1 hour receive authority as kings along with the beast. They have one purpose, and will give their power and authority to the beast. They will make war against the Lamb, but the Lamb will overcome them, because he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and with him will be his called, chosen, and faithful followers. I really could just stop right there, because you have in that one verse the image of both the Lamb and of King of kings and Lord of lords. It's really an image which holds within it a supreme paradox, almost a contradiction. It's like visual paradox, visual ad absurdum, because it holds in tension two visions of God. Jesus in Revelation is first and foremost, and this is not just a statement about Jesus, but a statement about God himself. Jesus in Revelation is first and foremost the Lamb slain. A lamb so vulnerable and so on the edge that it looks like it has already been killed. So it's on the edge of death. And yet within that image is this kind of divinity. This lamb slain is exalted and full of energy and full of divinity. But then later on, that same lamb becomes this massively powerful Jesus with the sword coming out of his mouth and this name on him, King of kings and Lord of lords. The challenge for a Christian, for any believer in God as far as I'm concerned, is how do you hold these two images in tension? What does it mean to be the lamb slain and yet this warrior? For me, I understand it in terms of spiritual warfare. Jesus in this world, God in this world is always slain. God as the living ideal is killed whenever he enters the world which rejects that total ideal. And yet, in the willingness to absorb suffering and death into himself, God ultimately overcomes those forces of evil which truly oppress the world. We are free to find God. We are one with God because God allows himself to be killed or almost pushed out of the world. There's a Jewish idea that's very similar, which is that God creates the world not by exerting influence, but by withdrawing himself. I love this image. And that Jesus, to me, is the same thing. Jesus Christ shows us a God who triumphs by withdrawing himself, by dying through suffering. But in that suffering and that death, on the spiritual level, there is triumph. God is the ultimate spiritual power. God overcomes. God creates, and God redeems by this activity of being willing to suffer and die. And that's how I understand these two things. But that formulation has some problems, as any formulation does. Ultimately, this tension is beyond words. There is no easy or simple or straightforward answer to how we make sense of this visual paradox, this alien imagery of these two opposing ideas brought into the same divine reality. And that brings up another issue, which is that ultimately religion will always have at its core a tension, some paradox, some seeming contradiction. And I think that's important because I think that religion ultimately to be vital, and I think Christianity to be true to the reality of God, has to reveal things or show things that cannot be said easily in human language. God ultimately stands beyond our ability to fully understand or fully describe. And so as we approach him linguistically, as we talk about God, we're going to talk in ways that seem like contradictions. I'm taking apologetics class right now, and one of the problems I have is that it's all too consistent. It's too neat. It's too rational. Now, I'm a person who believes that religion can be rational to some degree. Reason has a place in any healthy and vital and good religion. Religion cannot exist counter to our reason and our rationality. But I think it needs to go beyond reason and rationality. You don't want your relationship with God to be too sensical, too rational, too reasonable. It's not something that should be brought to an absolute degree. Because without a little bit of mystery, without a little bit of paradox, religion loses its vitality, its creativity, its tension, which helps lead us to vitality and creativity. So my message to you today is, don't run from the paradoxes. Don't run from the mystery. Embrace them. Try to live with them. Struggle with them. Don't seek out the irrational as some kind of ideal, and don't push away that which reason tells you is true. But don't be worried about moving beyond the reasonable. Sometimes the reasonable is just boring. Amen.